Hello, dear students. Welcome back to the online education of class 7 science. Dear students, in the previous class, I was explaining about the sexual reproduction in plants. Okay, so in plants, there are two kinds of gametes. One is male gamete, another one is female gamete. A stamen is a male part of the flower, whereas the pistil is the female part of the flower. Okay, so stamen contains anther and pigment. Okay, so inside the anther, we find the pollen grains. So which in turn produce the male gametes. Okay, so male gametes are produced in the pollen grains, okay, in the anther part of the stamen. So whereas a pistil consists of a stigma, style and ovary. So that ovary, inside the ovary there are one or more ovules, and that ovule has the ovule is itself, or the egg itself is the female gamete. So in the combination of this ovule or egg and the pollen grains together form a gamete. These combination of these two, fusion of these two gametes together form a zygote. Okay, so far we have completed in the previous class. Okay, let me explain in today's class regarding pollination in plants. Okay, so dear students, you have to keep it in mind that pollination is very important in the reproduction of the plants, because this is one of the reason through which the reproduction takes place in plants. Okay, so what is pollination? See, so generally pollen grains have a tough protective coat which prevents them from drying up. See, the pollen grains are have a tough coat, means protective coat. Okay, so in order to prevent them from drying up, means they should not get dried up very soon, so they should be have a long life. So hence they have a tough protective coat on them so that they cannot dry up soon. Okay, so since the pollen grains, they are very light in weight and they can be carried, okay, by the wind or the water for a long distance. So since the pollen grains are light in weight, they can be carried to by wind or by through water through long distance. Okay, so even many insects visit the flowers. Okay, so many insects, they visit the flowers and they carry away these pollen grains on their bodies. Yes, so you might have observed when the insect or any flies come and sit on the flower, so the on their legs or on their bodies those pollen grains have been attached. So hence they carry those pollen grains away from their by attaching to their bodies. Okay, when they come and sit on the another flower of the female part of the flower, so at that time that pollens are transported to the female part of the flower, hence the pollination takes place there. So even some of the pollen grains, okay, they lands on the stigma of a flower of the same kind. Okay, in that same plant only, from the pollen grains which are present on the male part of the flower, they fall by the wind or through the water. Okay, so by the wind they unexpectedly they land or they fall on the stigma, I mean female part of the flower of the same kind, means of the same plant. Okay, so this process of transfer of pollen grains from the anther, means that is male part of the flower, to the stigma of the flower, that is female part of the flower, is called pollination. Okay, so remember all of you, what is pollination? The process of transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower is called pollination. Okay, so if the pollen lands on the stigma of the same flower, then it is called self pollination. Remember, pollination is of two types. One is self pollination, another one is cross pollination. So if the pollen grains up on the stigma fall on the stigma of the same flower, okay, then it is called self pollination. Within the plant, if the pollen grains from the male part of the flower fall on the stigma, that is female part of the same flower, then it is called self pollination. When the pollens of a flower, okay, so when they land on the stigma of another flower of the same plant again, okay, so not on the same flower, stigma of the, when the pollens of the plant or a flower lands or falls on the stigma of another flower of the same plant, or that of the different plant of the same kind, same type of plant only, but if the pollens land on the stigma of the another plant, another flower of the another plant, so such kind of pollination is called cross pollination. Such kind of pollination is called cross pollination. So that you can observe in the figure 12.10a and figure 12.10b. Let me show you with the diagram. Okay, so just observe here. Look at the figure 12.10a, self pollination. So here you can observe, okay, so pollen grains are there on the two sides, pollen anther is there and filament is there. So pollens are present on the anther, so when they land on the stigma of the same flower of the same plant, then it is called self pollination. Okay, so here you look at the another flower is there here, so it also has the anther and filament, and it also having the pollens, and it is also having the stigma. Okay, so if the pollens of this flower of diagram A falls on the stigma of the another flower, it is shown through the diagram, falls on the stigma of the another flower, means that is of the same kind, that is another flower of the same kind. Okay, so when it falls on the female part, stigma is nothing but it is a female part of the plant, falls on the pollens fall of the one flower falls on the female part of the another flower of the same plant or another plant, then it is called cross pollination. So that is explained through the diagram. Okay, so I hope you will understand now. Okay, so transfer of pollen grains from the stigma to the from the anther to the stigma of the plant or a flower is called pollination. Okay, that is explained nicely through the diagram here. Okay, so now so look at the diagram here, figure 12.11. So this diagram shows the fertilization process, that is the formation of zygote. Okay, this is very very important, so let me explain you what is fertilization. So after the pollination is completed, okay, then when the pollen from a male part of the flower falls on the female part of the flower, so that male and female gametes fuse together and they form a zygote. So that is nothing but fertilization. See here, the cell which results in the results after the fusion of the gametes is called zygote. Okay, the cell which is formed after the fusion of male and female gametes is called zygote. Okay, so the process of fusion of male and female gametes, okay, together to form a zygote is called fertilization. The process of fusion of male and female gametes, okay, to form a zygote is called fertilization. Okay, the process of fusion of male and female gamete to form a zygote, that process is called fertilization. Okay, so the zygote then develops into an embryo. Okay, that won't become a seed, then a fruit. Okay, so dear students, I hope you have understood. Okay, so what is pollination, what are the types of pollination, and what is fertilization? These two are the very very important concepts in the plant reproduction. So dear students, write down the notes, points on this notes part of this lesson, and also draw the diagrams well. Okay, so that it will help you for the examination purpose and it for the further studies. Okay, so I hope you understood the concept, dear students. Thank you and have a nice day.